Okay, first off, as a public school teacher for the past 11 years, people often ask me what I teach. And my answer is I teach kids. The problem with CARA is we are forced to teach the test. Now, I'm not saying CARA needs to be completely done away with, but it certainly needs to be revamped. Because I'm more concerned about a child graduating high school and being able to go out to the workforce and make a productive living, not whether or not they can pass the CATS test. So we certainly have to do some reform. Now, I have met with all 3 superintendents in the last 2 months of all 3 school districts. Most of the administrators does not want to see much change. And their view is this. And I've told them as our representative I would be very cautious about change and certainly would weigh with them on any issue, on all the issues when it comes to that time. But their view is that, you know, you put millions and millions of dollars in a process for many, many years and goals to reach proficiency by 2014. If you change the process, we're never going to get there. But folks, we're not going to get there anyway, unless they change how they assess the test. They may do that until they make themselves look good. If they change how they assess the test, they may do that. It costs $10 million, estimated, to create portfolios. That is $10 million that could go to the road fund. That is $10 million that could go back to public education. Taylor County has been known as a very fiscal, responsible school district. We face $300,000 in cuts this school year alone. At Dare County, the superintendent told me they're going to cut 25 staff members this year. Council City school districts, I've certainly been in a bind for a couple of years. So we must reform the process, not change it, but at least reform it. The biggest problem as a teacher you hear this, is that the students are not held accountable. A child can come in, have a bad day, just sign the annual test, turn it in, and then the school, it reflects negatively on the school. There needs to be student accountability and staff accountability. I certainly bear my share of that, I'll be glad to. So I think the ACT, which the state just passed, every student's taking the ACT this year, is a step in the right direction. It is at least some form of a national standardized test. Also, on the issue, it was not necessarily, it was pretty much bipartisan. There were several votes against it, mostly Democratic votes against it in the Senate, and it never came up in the House. Basically, it went to the committee, and it stuck there. It's a problem we've got to get through in this state, or we're not going forward. I met a gentleman, I'm not going to call his name out in this room. I got respect for him, but he's a strong Democrat in this area. And I just told him, I said, if I get elected, sir, we're going to start working together. Because if we don't, we're not going to advance the Commonwealth, we're not going to advance this district. It's a political football. You had Dan Kelly and Senator David Williams, who certainly want that. They're the ones who pushed Senate Bill 1 and has a lot of great things in it, but not all of it together to kind of reform. But on the other side of the aisle, they don't want to touch it. And we've got to get past that issue. But certainly there needs to be more accountability for students. I support the ACT as a standardized test for all students to take. And also, certainly, accountability for the school systems, the staff, and administration.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Third question, let me ask this time to point out. Would you please, when you're after 15 seconds, just turn the card white and hold it up so that we know the 15 seconds are. You'll understand that after 15 seconds, she's going to indicate that you're through. Third question concerns budget constraints.
Mr. Montgomery.
Mr. Montgomery.
Of course, I've never lived through CARA. All my children were older, went through school. But I did talk to some educators, and they tell me that, of course, the test is, you're preparing all the time for the test. It's not, as Mr. Carney said, it is, you're not teaching the student, you're teaching the test. So, you know, of course, when I was in school, you know, they gave you a test, and you graded on what you made on that test. But now, the school's credibility is on the line because of funding and so forth that the schools get back. So, the educators I talked to, I said, what do you think about the CATS test? And they told me, they said, well, there's things in it that we need. The portfolios are excellent. It teaches a child how to express themselves, how to do better in the communities, and in the future what he needs to do. However, he says the cost of grading these portfolios are costing us in the millions and millions of dollars. They have to be graded, and they have to be read individually. He said, I think probably what we need is more, we need to keep part of part of the CATS test, but we need to have more multiple choice questions. So the students, we can find out more about what the students know. Because I noticed from the marquee at Taylor County Elementary that they're preparing for the CATS test over there right now. And I understand it's 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12th grades that are examined for this test. As I said, I'm not that familiar with the CATS test. I'm not an educator, so I don't understand all the things that need to go into this thing. But I'm sure it needs to be looked at, tweaked, and maybe we can come up with some great answers. I know at the time that it was passed, it was hailed as one of the greatest educational tools that the country had ever seen. However, there's no way of grading another state against our test because we're the only one that has it. And if you had the standardized test, you could grade against another state as to how the students are doing. And as I said, what I have learned that they think there's issues and there's things in the CATS test that need to be kept, but there are things that need to be taken out.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. Question 3 concerns budget constraints. And Mr. Swan will be the first to answer that question, and I will try to leave this side of the table out. The state is obviously in a very tight financial crunch. Much needed funding for things like human services, cost of living raises, for teachers and emergency services have been cut from the proposed state budget for the next 2 years. We can all say no more taxes all we want, but in reality, isn't it unrealistic to tell voters there will be no tax increases? If not, where will the needed added revenue come from? Mr. Swan?
No, it is not unrealistic to say that we don't need any more taxes in Kentucky. That's what we've been doing for several decades, and here we are, the same old, same old. Our economy is barely growing and skipping along because we keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And last time I checked, that's the definition of insanity, right? The first step is to reject any expansion of casino gambling across Kentucky.
That's right.
Casino gambling preys on poor, desperate people who are looking for a quick fix. And it's just a backdoor tax on the poor. Its supporters have made these pie-in-the-sky promises of $500 million in annual revenue every year coming in, but they just refuse to consider the facts. We know that when a casino moves in an area, all it brings is minimum wage jobs with no way to advance. It brings higher addiction to gambling and higher crime rates.